Hey everyone. So this is my Grow Your Own Human presentation. My name's Amelia Leonard, and my human's name is Kavi Sharma. She was born to conservative Indian parents Raj and Priya. And Raj and Priya were born in the 1960s in India, and they both had an arranged marriage. They decided to move from India to New York City to start a family. They were both smokers, but they decided to quit for both their health and the health of the baby once Priya got pregnant. According to the CDC, smoking during pregnancy can produce a low birth weight for the baby, a premature birth, or a risk of sudden infant death syndrome. Priya has a smooth pregnancy and gives birth to Kavi in 1988. Kavi is like a normal baby. She's happy and healthy. And Priya is a stay-at-home mom and is the primary caregiver. Priya is a very attentive mother and tries to soothe Kavi as soon as she starts crying. Raj works full time but still helps out when Priya needs a break. So Kavi is in Piaget's sensory motor stage. During this stage, children primarily learn about their environment through their senses and motor activities. Children's behavior moves from being reflex driven to more abstract. So Kavi likes to grab fingers a lot. She also develops different cries for wanting different things, and she loves to play. According to Bowlby's theory of attachment, a secure attachment occurs when the child feels confident the caregiver will provide help and nurturance when needed. Kavi has developed a secure attachment because of Priya's constant care. From the ages of 2 to 7, Kavi is in Piaget's pre-operational stage. So in a conservation task, basically you take two different cups that are two different sizes and shapes and pour the same amount of liquid in them. And then you ask the child which has more water. And the child will always say the taller cup because they don't take into account the different widths and the different shapes. So it's also becoming apparent that Kavi has two different parenting styles in the house. So Raj is more authoritarian and Priya is more authoritative. So according to Sahithya 2019, authoritative parenting often has better outcomes. Authoritarian parents are less responsive to the child, are highly demanding, and grant low levels of autonomy. And authoritative parents are responsive to the child, highly demanding, and they grant autonomy. So she has a good mix of two different parents. When Kavi is in high school, she's on the honor roll. She's in the last of Piaget stages, the formal operational stage, which means children can think about abstract concepts and are not limited to a current time, person, or situation. She starts driving at 16 and she graduates high school at 18 on the honor roll. When she starts college, she lives at home during her freshman year and she starts experiencing some independence issues with her father. She wants to go out more and stay out later, but her father doesn't want her to. And it inhibits her from going to parties and different social groups and meetups and meeting with friends. Her father is very strict about who he wants her to see and hang out with. So it's not something that gets resolved during that year. Um, Finally, she decides when she's a sophomore, she's going to move onto campus because of the issues that she had freshman year at home. She doesn't want to repeat that. And she finds a whole new group of friends, but they do drink alcohol and Kavi does not. And they eat meat and Kavi is a vegetarian. So she starts feeling like an outsider and gets anxiety like every time she says no to things because her group of friends is peer pressuring her to do things she doesn't want to do. So one day she caves and eats meat and feels immensely like guilty and anxiety ridden. And she decides that she needs to talk to someone. Her friends basically peer pressure her about anything where she's different and they want her to be more like them. And so Tavi finally decides like she needs to go to counseling because she doesn't want to continue to live this type of life for the rest of her college years. So Kavi starts counseling and is in person-centered therapy. So this type of therapy is focused on the client and helps empower them with self-awareness. Clients take more of a lead in therapy and they're able to come to their own conclusions. So this is the right therapy for Kavi because she is already starting to believe she was wrong for eating meat and she wants to set boundaries with her friends and go back to being a vegetarian. She just needs some more confidence to do so. So one of the things her therapist works on is setting boundaries so that she can learn to speak out for herself and say what's important to her. And if her friends don't understand that, then to cut back on who she deals with. Her therapist also focuses on deep breathing techniques. So the therapy is successful after a few months, and Kavi learns who can be considered an actual friend who listens to her boundaries, who listens to her, who accepts her for being a vegetarian, for being a Hindu, for being who she is. And she ends up with a few close friends that she graduates college with. So Kavi graduates college and becomes a teacher. In her new job, she enters into an interracial relationship with a coworker, and it causes problems with her family. Both Kavi and her mother and father are both active members in their temple and are proud to be Hindu. And her parents believe this relationship will harm Kavi's participation at the temple and her faith. They just wanted her to not necessarily have an arranged marriage, but they wanted her to at least be with someone who was Indian or Hindu. And they really are just against it because they just believe it's going to harm her faith and they don't want their grandchildren to be raised in an interfaith relationship. So Kavi ultimately breaks up with a coworker to avoid further problems with her family. And when she's 25, she reconnects with an old male friend that she had from the temple and they start dating. And Kavi's parents are extremely happy about this, and his name is Arnav. And when Arnav and Kavi are both 27, they get married at the temple. The couple have trouble getting pregnant. It takes them ultimately they it takes them two 2 years because they start IVF. So when they have trouble getting pregnant, they start IVF, and eventually the IVF is successful, and she gives birth to a daughter named Shri when she's 32. And when Kavi is 36, her father develops emphysema from smoking, and he lasts 5 years before he passes away at the age of 65. Kavi is devastated, but also worried about how her mother will cope. Kavi was always closer to her mother than her father. Sometimes she had a rocky relationship with her father, so she feels guilty about that, about having that sort of relationship and how she feels about him passing away. She still is obviously devastated, but she's still dealing with the issues of not being as close to her dad as to her mom. And according to the continuing bonds theory on grief, it is said that one does not get over grief with time, it just transforms and continues. And so, knowing this, when she is 42, Kavi goes to grief counseling, and it is recommended that she do something in remembrance of her father. And so Kavi invites temple members over to her house to celebrate her father and share good memories of him. And people bring flowers, share, eat, sing, and pray together. And when Kavi is 50, Shri graduates from college and she becomes an empty nester. So 3 years later, Priya, Kavi's mother, comes to live with her and Arnav. She has been exhibiting signs of depression, but Kavi has learned that some elderly people are mistakenly assumed to be depressed because of health issues rather than grief. And Kavi isn't sure what the cause is, but she knows she wants to be closer to her mother, to be there for her. She wants Priya to not have to worry about everyday things. Priya still like cooks and cleans and does stuff just because it's good for her to keep active and to keep her mind active, but Kavi wants to make sure that it's not a necessity. And then when Kavi is 58, Shri gets married, and she gets married to a person of Caucasian descent. And it's okay for Kavi because she knows how she felt when she was in an interracial relationship and how her parents reacted. And so Kavi is completely fine with it. And even Priya has calmed down about it and is fine. Um, so she becomes a grandmother at 60. Shri has a son, and when Kavi is 61, Priya passes away from natural causes. Kavi is heartbroken to lose her mother, but also knows how lucky she is that she had her mother in her life that long and that Priya got to become a great grandmother. Kavi retires from teaching at 65 and decides to visit India to try to find some peace. Arnav is still working, so Kavi travels solo. Kavi visits temples and family members and feels closer to her parents. It's a very good trip, and she connects with her ancestral roots. So she returns home feeling refreshed and optimistic. 3 years later, and Kavi is starting to feel signs of aging that she hadn't noticed before, such as her mind running slower and just her body just feels like it's slowing down. Um, Arnav decides to retire as well that year when Kavi comes back from India. When Kavi is 73, she starts to have thoughts of death. And the terror management theory proposes that when thoughts of death are triggered, one can experience benefits such as more altruism, better health habits, focusing on more meaningful things in life, more spirituality, more compassion, and intrinsic goals. So Kavi becomes very focused on herself and her family and spends as much time as possible with Shri and her grandchildren. She also starts volunteering at the temple. So when Kavi and Arnav are 77, Arnav passes away, and Kavi feels at peace and ready to go. And Shri believes it was meant to be that Kavi passes away only a few months later when she is 78. So, as is Hindu custom, Shri has both her parents cremated. Um, for my references, um, the Hindu American Foundation has 5 things to know about Hindus and death. This was actually a really interesting article. Um, I went into it more in my paper about um, different traditions and things that Hindus do around death, but um, I did put in the presentation, obviously, that they were cremated. Um, American Lung Association, if you wanted to know more about emphysema, obviously our textbook and the Oxford handbook. About Piaget's, they have all the different stages on here, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for the smoking, if you wanted to know more about the smoking facts, pregnancy, and stuff like that. And I found this to be an interesting article or journal, yeah, journal article. Parenting styles and its impact on children, cross-cultural review with focus on India, and also talking about authoritative parenting. Um, and I found another study about authoritative parents, how mothers in India are more likely to be authoritarian, and Indian mothers who have come to the US are more likely to be authoritative. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, so thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.